Hello and welcome to Parent Analytics' fifth annual Global Demand Awards, where we highlight the most in-demand TV series, movies, and talent of 2022. Today, I am joined by Kelly Campbell, president of Peacock and direct-to-consumer. Kelly, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Happy to be here. Thanks.
So to jump in, Peacock, still just 2 years old. You only joined the company roughly a year ago. Everything's still very much in the embryonic stages, yet Peacock still managed to double its subscribers from January to December of last year. What is the big plan to build on that momentum to help continuing kick off 2023?
Well, I'm glad you started there. We did double paid subscribers, more than 20 million paid subscribers for Peacock by the end of last year. And actually, Peacock was the most downloaded streaming app last year. So when we think about going forward in 2023, our big plan to build on that momentum is really to double down on what's working. So when it comes to sports, for example, we're launching our partnership with the Big Ten this year. When it comes to originals, Poker Face launched last week and is already off to an incredible start. And we're going to continue to bring the most recent movies straight from theaters to Peacock. Tar, Oscar-nominated film, is a great example of this, launched this weekend. So we have extremely aggressive goals, but honestly, we feel like we're on the right track.
Now, you mentioned the originals. We got Poker Face. Bel-Air was among the top 2.7% of all TV shows in the US last year, as is The Best Man, the final chapter since it launched in mid-December. You got Traders coming out strong. You continue to build out Telemundo programming. How important is appealing to a diverse array of audiences? Because it does very much feel like a concentrated effort to hit a lot of demographics.
Yep, it is incredibly important. So we're thrilled with the success of the shows that you mentioned. We are thrilled that Best Man was also Nielsen rated as #1 with Black audiences. And look, ultimately, we want everyone to feel like they have a home on Peacock and that there is content for them. T+, our partnership with Telemundo, is another great example of this, where we offer content that appeals to Hispanic audiences. We offer bilingual programming. And these are just examples of really working towards our ultimate goal, which is to bring in audiences from everywhere and truthfully to reflect the world that we live in.
I know it's very anecdotal, but I have friends with young kids who are already introducing their kids to T+ as a way to hopefully raise, bilingual children. So to have that educational aspect built into what is already just very charming kids program, a nice little double benefit right there.
Thank you. I'm so glad to hear that. And that's exactly what we're hoping for.
Now, you mentioned up top, you want to continue doubling down on what's working. Peacock has distribution agreements with Apple, Xbox, Google, Sony, Amazon, Roku. In today's more fragmented entertainment environment, how important have distribution packs such as this become as you attempt to reach both as wide an audience as possible and hyper target some of the niches that you've been catering towards?
So, distribution deals are incredibly important. Ultimately, the goal is to get Peacock into as many households as possible. So that requires, you mentioned broad, you mentioned niche, like that requires partnering with a diverse array of players in the ecosystem. So partners are playing a key role in our success. We have great existing relationships with our partners. And we'll also continue to build relationships with new partners across the broader ecosystem. So they're important now. They're going to continue to be important. And we're going to be out there talking to new folks day in and day out.
Well, it's exciting from an industry standpoint because every collaboration, every partnership brings a new subplot, a new wrinkle to the industry. And like you said, get yourself in front of the right eyeballs, more eyeballs, targeted eyeballs. It's such a multi-layered process. It feels like, despite the fact that there's been this proliferation of ways that we can reach audiences, it's become ever harder to have a monoculture.
Yeah, true.
Now, Peacock has various licensing deals with, Paramount Global, Lionsgate, others. With the number of scripted series and streaming films breaking records in many of the last few years, the industry has kind of been swept up in exclusive original content. But what role do you see licensed library titles like a Yellowstone, one of the 10 most in-demand TV series on Peacock in the US last year? What value do those still bring to the table versus exclusive originals?
Tremendous value. And when you think about the role that content plays on a streaming service, we look to content both to attract new audiences, to bring audiences in, but also to get people viewing more, watching more, and really keep them with Peacock and establish a more sort of loyal relationship between the consumer and Peacock. So while originals are great to bring people in, you mentioned our library and our licensed titles. These are really, really important to drive viewership and to build that more loyal relationship between the consumer and Peacock. And when you think about these opportunities, library really provides the opportunity to bring in a high volume of quality content. So you think about, for example, that 70s show, hundreds of episodes. So that translates to hundreds of hours of viewership on Peacock. And that's just one example of the opportunity of some of these sort of libraries of content from within NBCU and from the ecosystem at large.
And that does seem to be a focal point of Peacock. You are built for both lean forward and lean back television. There is that 70s show or, Hallmark Christmas movies from a month ago that I can kind of throw on as I fold some laundry or do some snacks or just, or eating dinner in front of the TV. But then there's also, Poker Face, Traders, Best Man, things that are really engaging that you need to stay up to date with as much as possible. How much of a balance are you guys trying to strike in that regard?
You've got us figured out. It really is. I mean, we are looking to bring content to audiences, whoever you are and however you want to watch. And when you look at some of the experiences that we have, both in the robust sports offering that you can find on Peacock, as well as live events, it's really an incomparable offering in the space. Peacock arguably has the most robust sports platform. So when you look at that combined with things like our original content, the library content that we just talked about, as well as things like news and the channels experience in the Peacock ecosystem, in the Peacock experience, we really bring a very complete offering to consumers so that you can watch, both when you're sitting there highly engaged, leaning in, whether that's Poker Face or something else, but you can also just flip on a channel, flip on, something else within that has more episodes and you're looking for that lean back experience. I'm glad to hear that you do your own laundry. Then we've got you covered, Brandon.
I appreciate it. As a loyal and proud couch potato, someone who loves all things TV and film, I really appreciate it. And I'm glad we are on the same page because I'm glad you brought up sports and live events. That segues perfectly with my next question, which is how big they have been for the platform in terms of growth, in terms of subscriber retention. You simulcasted World Cup, Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, Golden Globes, Miley Cyrus's New Year's event, NFL football, of course, for a diehard fan such as myself. At a time when the industry seems to be shying away from traditional models in a sense, how has being part of the NBC portfolio and that legacy media foundation benefited Peacock?
So we are in an incredible position because we kind of have the best of both worlds as Peacock. And so much of that is tied to the fact that we are built on the iconic legacy of NBC, but yet we're built sort of within it, on top of it, as a startup, and we have the ability to sort of think differently. We have access to a different set of data. We can take big swings. We can, operate, and we do day in and day out with this mentality where we're partnering closely across NBC Universal to really draft off all of the learnings and successes to date, but also, take risks and sort of, take bigger swings and approach things in a new way as we watch consumer behavior sort of shift towards this new way of consuming content.
It does seem like this sort of melding of the nearly century of lessons that NBC itself has learned and, of course, springboarding into this digital present and future that we find ourselves in.
Totally.
Now, to stick with that, NBC finished the 2021-2022 season as the #1 network in the advertiser-friendly 18 to 49 demographic. It was actually the second consecutive year you guys did that, 8th time in 9 seasons. Is that the same demo you're trying to reach with Peacock? Is there a kind of plant your flag and expansion plan there? What's the thinking?
So, look, demo is sort of tried and true, and we look at that data, but we don't look at demographics in the same way as a broadcast network. We have direct data, we have first-party data. We look very closely at viewership patterns, for example. So we really are targeting just based on different criteria, given the access to data that we have. So when we think about targeting audiences or targeting different cohorts, it's typically based on what viewer patterns look like. and what we can see and predict based on that behavior, not just things like age and gender.
I think that makes sense. Listen, as someone who works at a data company, I very much am on board with that approach. Shameless plug for our own products and services.
There you go.
But I think it help inform structure and unique strategies. And that kind of brings me to my next point. It's already been in effect for a few years now, but it remains one of the most unique deals in the industry. So I was hoping you could walk me through the thinking behind how NBCU has structured its pay one window. Because for anyone who doesn't know, as of now, Universal films arrive on Peacock about 120 days after their theatrical release for 4 months, and also during the last 4 months of a title's 18-month pay one window. Very one-of-a-kind structure there.
So I'm glad you brought it up. And actually, it's up to 120 days, depending on the film. So you'll see a number of examples where films are showing up on Peacock after, in the case of Tar, a few months, for example. So this is all part of this broader partnership that we have with Universal Pictures and the team that Donna Langley leads. And really, they were game to rethink the legacy windowing strategy in order to help Peacock. And so far, this has been a tremendous success for Peacock. I mean, think about some of these titles like Jurassic and Minions. They've had a massive impact for Peacock. And even more recently, titles like Ticket to Paradise. So it is unique, and it really stems back to the partnership that Universal Pictures and Peacock have.
I mean, any service is going to want to market around Julia Roberts and George Clooney. That's just an easy sell right there.
Totally. It is. It's such a fun watch.
So to stick with Universal Films for a second, Marry Me, Firestarter, Halloween Ends, they all premiered day and date in theaters and on Peacock last year. They posted exceptional audience demand peaks in their first month of release based on paired analytics data. Is that a strategy you'll still deploy for select titles in 2023 and beyond? Or is that being sunset as, pandemic restrictions kind of ease up?
So we don't have anything to share right now. I will say there's no question that those day and date titles worked very well for Peacock. And we were thrilled that we were able to make it happen. So we'll see. We'll see what the future holds here.
That's fair. I had to throw it out there. Had to ask.
That's fair.
So 2022, if we look at it from this whole zoomed out, holistic view, a big reset on the streaming model. Many companies now embracing ad-supported and free ad-supported services as a result. I'm curious, how do you think Peacock is uniquely positioned to take advantage of this shift, given its tiered approach to fast AVOD and SVOD?
So on this one, a couple of things come to mind. First of all, really the core of Peacock's business model has been premium AVOD since the start. So that is something that I think is relatively unique to Peacock. And secondly, no one else in the premium streaming space has both the scale and momentum that Peacock has right now. We talked about it up front. We're growing very quickly, most downloaded streaming app last year. So we are on that growth trajectory, highly relevant right now to the consumer. But we also have a world-class built-in advertising function, the data and technology platform, and a very established best-in-class sales team. So when you put those two things together, really it makes Peacock the obvious place for brands to invest their money, their dollars, and really place their bets.
Well, NBC upfronts were famous for decades. Now you're just, adding a little bit of a digital component to that.
Well, a little bit more than a little bit.
No, of course.
Yeah, but you're right.
I mean, look, track record.
It's incredible when you bring it all together to think about, like, as someone who came up through marketing, I know I'd be placing bets with Peacock right now. When you look at the opportunity to place your dollars across the NBCU ecosystem and really make a bet on Peacock, it's the right time to be doing it. And I think that's going to become very clear this year.
I think something that feeds into that effort too was the huge development from last year where Peacock's library reclaimed next day airing capabilities for Bravo and NBC from Hulu. How important was that for daily subscriber engagement and usage? So
being the exclusive streaming home for NBC and Bravo is really another thing that differentiates Peacock and makes Peacock special. It speaks to the unique relationship between Peacock and NBCU, which we touched on. Think about something like Night Court. So Night Court's a great example. It's a recent hit on NBC, a big hit on NBC, but it's also driving audiences to Peacock. This is a very clear win-win. Great for subscriber acquisition, engagement, and usage, but really a win across NBC and Peacock. Bravo is another great example of this. Having Bravo exclusively next day on Peacock, having Peacock be the streaming home for Bravo. This does a couple of things. It gives Bravo fans a place to dig deeper. They can come to Peacock for more content, but it also attracts new viewers into the Bravo sort of ecosystem and franchises that are so beloved by Bravo fans. So we're creating more fans by bringing people in through Peacock to the Bravo universe. So there's a number of examples, but those are just a couple to highlight just how much value there is in really, as NBC and Peacock, bringing these sort of Bravo and NBC content to Peacock exclusively.
I think it speaks to what you said up top and that you're doubling down on what's working. Peacock is pulling from NBCU's deep library of classic TV shows and movies. You're building up the original library across a variety of genres. You're utilizing Universal movies in these very interesting new ways. Where then is the white space opportunity for Peacock? What is something the streamer hasn't yet done a lot of in your year here that you hope to see more of in 2023 if you hopefully have more time, because it's an around-the-clock job?
Yeah. Yes, the pace is aggressive, but I guess that's why we're all here, right? When I think about white space, I think back to like the sort of beginning days of streaming. And streaming was really born out of the idea of creating a better experience for watching content. Really, like streaming as a category was launched as a consumer first category. So at Peacock, we continue to challenge ourselves to think about how we can make that watching experience even better. I'll give you an example of the type of things that we're looking at. So we're beta testing a new feature that allows fans to watch with. So we did our first test in December with an episode of Real Housewives, where we replayed the episode with live real-time commentary from two of our housewives. Even in beta, we had more than 25,000 accounts tune in and huge positive fan reaction on social. So this is the type of experience that we think is truly unique and also just creates more options and better ways to watch for consumers. So as we think about white space, those are the types of opportunities that we're looking at.
I love that. And I'm not necessarily the biggest reality fan, but you have me hooked. I want to know the deep behind the scenes tea that only they can spell. I hope you expand that. I want to hear DreamWorks animation editors talking about Puss in Boots. I want it all, please.
Well, be careful because it is highly addictive, I will tell you.
Well, you know what? As someone whose job is more or less to watch TV and films, I think you're just feeding me a great excuse to continue doing that. So I appreciate that.
There you go.
So that seems like it's going to be a big new attraction. And you guys are already growing, as you mentioned, surpassed 20 million subscribers. But you have also previously said that it's not just about scale. It's about scaling while building a quality relationship with consumers. That's been a theme of what we've been talking about today. I was wondering if you could just expand a bit on that and see what else that entails in 2023.
Sure. So you're right. I have said this and I continue to believe this. It is about scaling while building a quality relationship with consumers. We have to get both of those rights. And this is because we're in it for the long haul. We are truly, with every decision that we're making, looking not just at bringing people in, but how to build that long-term relationship with consumers. And ultimately, this is good for consumers because we're constantly challenging ourselves with that consumer first mindset. But it's also good for business. Our most engaged subscribers, the ones who are watching the most, are our most valuable subscribers from a business perspective. So, being successful from a business perspective just creates this loop where we can reinvest even more in creating a better consumer experience. So ultimately, it's good for consumers, it's good for business, and we're going to continue to focus on that balance of scaling while building that deep quality relationships, that lasting relationship with consumers.
So then to use that as a springboard, I'm curious, given that, your full slate under your first year is really starting to hit the airwaves right now. Given the youth of Peacock, how is the streamer's brand still evolving? In another 2 years, what does Peacock look like to audiences?
So look, as I mentioned up top, you'll continue to see a vast, very complete offering of content across sports, across television, both recent and original hits, as well as libraries of content, films, recent, best of what's in theaters coming straight to Peacock, as well as, again, library breadth and depth of content. So you'll continue to see that very complete offering. We're going to continue to bring new sort of unique stories into Peacock through our original strategy. We talked a little bit about Poker Face. This launched last week. Natasha Lyonne is brilliant in this, and fans are already responding. We have, I think perhaps one of the most impressive, actually the most impressive slate of originals coming up this year. Mrs. Davis is a show that's coming up from Tara Hernandez and Damon Lindelof. I'm telling you, this show is unlike anything you've seen before. There are elements of faith and technology. It's an incredibly unique story. It's exactly the type of thing that we want to be bringing to consumers, and we're very excited for that.
Oh, trust me, I have earmarked Miss Davis for quite some time. I think much like Rian Johnson and Natasha Lyonne, the pairing of Hernandez and Lindelof is such a unique pairing with complementary voices that I'm very excited to dive into, as I'm sure many fans are. So given your long, extensive history in entertainment, I'm going to end with this question, most important of the whole interview. If you could have dinner with one fictional character, who would it be and why?
Oh, this is a timely one. I'd have to choose Charlie Kale, our lead character in Poker Face. I mean, the woman has seen the world and she's got stories to tell. So I would want to just sit back and listen to her tell stories.
That's a great selection. You just got to make sure you don't fib to her about anything. She's going to know. But other than that, a great selection. Yeah. Kelly, thank you so much for your time. We are so excited to see what Peacock has to offer in 2023 and beyond.
Thank you so much, Brandon.
I hope you enjoyed that video from our Global Demand Awards virtual festival. Reach out to us today and find out why some of the largest organizations around the globe are partnering with Parrot Analytics to solve some of their most pressing problems.